Hello, this is the review of Chapter 7, Increasing Learning by Using Note-Taking Strategies, from the book by me, Stephen Cardenas. This chapter essentially discusses ways to teach students more effective ways to take notes, as the name implies. And uh, the focus, of course, is more on students with extraordinary learning needs, or ELNs. Here, let me go next slide. And students with ELNs, they often have difficulty doing all the components involved in taking notes, which there's a lot of, and it can be difficult even for students without such difficulties. And these difficulties can be anything such as ADHD or ADD, dyslexia, autism, any of that. And a quote from the book, page 87, says, "Note-taking is the primary strategy used to learn the content from lectures, so secondary students must be taught to apply that strategy effectively. College students spend roughly 80% of their class time listening to lectures, and in my own experience in college, this is very true. Most of the classes I've been in have followed a similar format of listen to the professor talk about the topic and you take notes on it. It's always been fairly straightforward. There's not a lot of creative projects to them. But note taking, what it does, it not only encodes the information better in the memory of the student so that they can recall it better on exams and just in life in general, but it also serves as an external device for them to review later on. Both these components help with the memory aspect of learning the material and retaining it. Now, one of the strategies recommended for students to take notes faster, to cut down on the time that takes for students to write down notes from the lecture, because part of what makes note-taking so hard is the time it takes to write it down, because the way we think about information is a lot quicker than the speed at which we can write it down with our hands. So abbreviations can slightly cut down on that time a bit, and some ways to do this are for using 3 to 4 letters to abbreviate long words. And this could be anything such as, instead of saying executive powers, you could say XPOW, or something like that. You could also use initialing. For instance, instead of saying something like cell specialization, you just write CS. You can also do conservation of consonants, which, as the name says, it's taking the vowels out of a letter, or a word, to shorten it down a bit. So if you're saying students, you just write STDNT. And this will all, of course, allow for faster note-taking. By the way, you can also use symbols too, like here with the image on the right, you can use arrows or greater than and less than signs, at signs, things like that. Now, summarizing, that is another important aspect of note-taking, and by doing this more efficiently, students can help to identify main ideas better and more effectively. Students in secondary education are going through a time where their metacognitive development is greatly increasing, and they can handle more complex tasks such as this. And summarization will, of course, build upon that and develop it further. Sometimes in summarizing, a few sentences can be sufficient. It depends on what the topic is, but often less is more. And summaries help to reorganize information to improve retention, and they can later on be modified if you compare your summaries with other students, and perspectives on summaries can change over time, of course, too. But anyway, what I mean is it's a good way for students to bounce ideas off each other and refine and combine their summaries. Now, partial graphic organizer notes, we are now getting into different formats for recording notes here now. And what this one is, it employs the cognitive process to facilitate learning. And often full notes will deprive students of the encoding benefits of note-taking. That would mean if the whole thing was given to them already, just like a straight-up study guide made by the teacher. And whereas no notes, if this thing on the right was completely blank and empty, well, that could then, sorry, just looking at my own notes here. If it was completely empty, then students would be more likely to write down information that isn't as relevant to what the main ideas are, and they could sort of write down more unimportant things. The likelihood of that increases. This style of note-taking can improve the student's knowledge and, again, increase metacognitive skill. So partial graphic organizer notes, it's a partial slash skeleton note style. Here you see there's different columns where there's the topics and then different sub-detailed areas for. Now, guided notes. Guide notes are more of a skeleton outline of main ideas with open spaces for students to fill in. And testing for this has resulted in 60% higher exam scores among certain student test groups. This style of notes also is good for use for daily review. Repetition helps with information retention. Guide notes also provide explicitness and structure. It's a very organized way of doing it with main ideas and then sub bullet points below to associate those points with the other greater ideas on the topic. And repetition, explicitness, and structure are all important components for helping ELN students. Those are things that they require to learn and retain information better. Now, strategic notes. This style uses the assumption that students can use their metacognitive skills to become more strategic at note-taking. It activates their prior knowledge and organization to help with engagement. It's often structured as a generic guide, sort of like this on the right. It's pretty straightforward, similar to the previous one. But what this one does is at the top they write down what they already know about the subject. So that way this more already established information they possess is more built upon rather than starting from scratch. Now, brick and mortar notes. Students can see a question before they see an answer. They can take a blank piece of paper and sort of cover up the bottom part of the paper and slide down as they go through the review. The question is seen before the answer. And students should make their notes based on the teacher's outline that would be up on the board for this. Questions and answers can be used in different colors, the question could be in blue, the answer could be in red, and this sort of is more of a visual style of note-taking that will help with the retention of it and streamline the process of reviewing, because it often blends together if it's all in one color for something like this. It's called brick and mortar style notes because the question is sort of like the thin layer that holds the brick together, the mortar, and then the answer is the thicker one, the brick, and they're all stacked up on top of each other like brick and mortar would be. This style of note-taking can produce behavioral improvement in ELDs and increase memory. There has been some evidence as to that. It increases their discipline for this sort of thing. Now, this one, 3-column personalized notes, engages students by soliciting their personal connections to the material. The 3-column strategy for visual note-taking, and again, visual note-taking has been proven to be beneficial for memory. And how this is structured is the first column is the main topic, second column is more detailed notes relating to the topic, but the third column is a personal experience of the student that will help them have more of a personal or emotional connection to the material to help remember better. Memory has strong affiliation to emotion and to more long-term memory like that. Helps to connect the short-term memory with the long-term memory. And students can also optionally share their third column with other students to improve the comprehension and retention of the material. This strategy can increase motivation, improve memory, and also decrease confusion with the way it is structured. Now, the last one here we have is newspaper notes, and this takes inspiration from newspaper reporters who are professionals at pointing out big ideas first in order to sell the paper. And that's by placing important ideas first and supporting ideas after, like you'd see in a paper. It's the headline, and then the rest of the article is just all the information on it. And we see that here where it's one box of the main idea, and then underneath there are some supporting detail boxes. This can help, or it uses the 5 W's and H, which are who, what, when, where, why, and how. This strategy can help with sequencing and organization of ideas and timelines, things like that. And the structure of it can be less intimidating because it's just big points and then a few details underneath it. It's not super complicated, it's very straightforward, and yeah, this one has been proven in real life to have some merit to it. So, yeah, that's the presentation. Thank you very much for listening.